it's dried up. Come and take a look at what we got here. So now the salt has left a beautiful pattern on my fox. And what I'm going to do now, so that's the first layer, I'm going to do the second layer of the fox. And I'm going to be very strategic, and I'm going to take this, and I'm going to tip my fox this way, so that when I paint, I'm not going to get a hard line. This is what I do. So layer 1 is wet on wet. And generally speaking, layer 2 is wet on wet. And usually you start partitioning things off and wetting them. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to come in to some of these darker places in here. And I'm going to wet very strategically the side, one side of my fox. And let's see, I use this as my map. So we'll just wet, we're going to actually wet the whole thing. So start wetting the top, gently, gently, because we have got color on now. Pull that edge of water down, pull the edge of water down, and down. Now right now you can't really see what I've wet, but you will in a minute. The reason it's at this angle is so that when I drop in color here, it's not going to come to the edge of this. I'm going to drop the color here and we're going to get a nice soft edge. Now this is very, very dry. So when I dried it up from step 1, I allowed the salt to do its thing first. Once the sheen was gone and it looked like the salt wasn't going to do any more patterning, then I dried it up. It should be so dry that if you touch it with your wrist, it's not cool. Alright, so here we go. So now I'm going to come into my palette and I'm going to start off with a little bit of blue, and I'm back in my Winsor blue. And I'm just going to put a little bit on to start, and I'm looking here, looks pretty good. I can come in and see I'll be putting color here and into the mouth. Oops. There you go. I've got color on underneath now. This is a Winsor Newton Series 7 number 7 brush. So there's no scrubbing. So as I go over this paint underneath, it's very, very gentle. It's not going to scrub what's under or lift what's underneath up. Now I'm just gently taking this, lightening it up a bit. Back in here, I'm going to come into, I love Indanthrene blue, a little bit of Indanthrene blue, and I'm going to begin to shape these darker areas. So I got this darker. Now I can come in with my Indanthrene. I'm introducing a new color now too, which I love, and it's called Violet Dioxazine, I do believe. And I'm just gonna, and my colors this time, so my first time it was very, very light. It looked like that when I put it on. Now I'm going a little thicker. This is a stainer, so wherever you put it, it's not going to come off. And that can be good and that can be bad, depending on what you want. I'll come into that. I'm going to add maybe some Winsor blue, because I love the combination. Tapping it in. I'm looking here to see my shapes I've got in here. Could probably turn this way now. That's alright. And I come. So I'm going to push this little paw back. And I'm going to put some darker stuff here. Like that. Gentle, gentle. Let's see. I'm going to use a little bit of neutral tint. Now, if ever you're going to go more natural, here's a rhyme for you. Natural, neutral. Little neutral tint will make it a little less like cotton candy colors and more like a natural looking photographic fox if you want it to be photographic. So anytime you're in nature, you want it to, and you want your painting to look like a photo, you use more neutral tints. Put a little bit here. Oops, that's drying, so I want to take that out, stay out of there. I'm just going to come in now and gently soften with a damp brush my paws, like this, like that. If I wanted to, I could take a little yellow and maybe pop it in here. Maybe a little pink. It's your fox, right? It's your world, so make it yours. I've got a little hard edge here, and I can just take that out by, again, making my brush damp and just gently. Now, the kind of brush you use really does count, so get a good brush. I'm gonna take that off there, and now I'm gonna put in the tail. I could wet this if I wanted to. Before I do the tail, I'm just gonna take a little bit of salt and just come in back into my fur, like so. See if it does anything. As you put on layers, the salt does less and less, so I'm going to come into the tail here, gently. I've got my Kleenex in my hand, so I have too much water. I can tap it. Just gently going to put on some water, like that. And I'm going to come into my two of my favorite colors, my Winsor Blue. Whoops, that's a bit too much, so I just rinse my brush, tap it, rinse it again, tap it. I just take that blue and I'm just going to swoosh it. There we go. Now the more layers of color I have in my painting, so the more buildup I have, let's say this is at layer 4 or something, I am far more careful about how I move my brush. So I'm just going to take that out, come into some violet. I love violet. Anybody who knows me knows I love violet. So now I'm just pulling it up in some, and I rinse my brush, tapped it off on the Kleenex, and I can just gently pull up some hair. There we go. Okay, so now what I do, again, I'm going to come in, a little bit of salt. Sometimes I overdo the salt, but that's okay. It's fun. It's just fun today. It's not about being perfect. It's about having fun. So I'm going to leave that for a minute. So this is step 2. And we're going to come in and do step 3 when this is dry. So I'll see you guys in a minute.